Blah, blah, blah.
Welcome back, happy haunts, to Shelf-O-Ween, where I'm taking a look at the Skybound's Universal Monster Run. Today we're taking a look at Frankenstein, my favorite Universal monster. So naturally, you'd think I'd be head over heels for these 4 issues. You'd think... Okay, let's get this out of the way. From Creature forward, I've been collecting these books on release, month by month. And on release, I thought these Frankenstein comics were alright. Nothing too amazing, but decent in its own right. But after reading all 4 issues back to back, I can't help but feel that something, somewhere in this experiment, has gone horribly wrong. And I don't want to trash it. There are things I like, but so far, this is my least favorite of the bunch so far. Frankenstein was written and illustrated by Michael Walsh. So considering how much work Walsh put into it, I can assume this was a passion project of his. Ahead of time, I am so fucking sorry. The story follows a young boy named Paul, who seeks vengeance against Henry Frankenstein for using his deceased father's corpse for his experiment. And that's pretty much it. We follow this child around as the events of the movie play out in the background. I will admit that the idea of someone seeking revenge on Frankenstein for stealing away a loved one's corpse is a good solid idea, but Paul just isn't that interesting to follow. It makes the highlights of the book the scenes copied and illustrated from the movie. Granted, Kate from Creature from the Black Lagoon Lives was also driven by revenge, but you could argue she was more interesting of a character given how tormented she was from her own near-death experience. Paul just has one thing on his mind. Paul interacts with some of the characters from the film like Fritz, Baron Frankenstein, Victor, but the one that stands out is Elizabeth, mainly because she's the only one not being a complete asshole. Fritz threatened to torture him, Baron Frankenstein kicked him out of his house against Elizabeth's wishes, Victor was about to pummel him into the pavement until Elizabeth intervened. The kid is like 10! The fuck is wrong with everyone? Even Dr. Waldman, the man who tried to be Henry's voice of reason and tried to talk him out of his vile experiments, belittles Fritz, the hunchback, after he told him about how Frankenstein took him in out of the rain like a sick puppy and taught him how to be his helping hand. I mean, my God. Frankenstein is not gonna run out of corpses anytime soon at the rate these characters are being fucking assassinated. Don't get me wrong, Fritz, he's not a nice dude. In the end, he fucked around and he found out. But everyone else? They're the characters we rooted for in the movie! Okay, let's not crash out this early. After all, there are things I liked about this run. The art is more stylized than the Creature from the Black Lagoon, which had a more by-the-numbers animated comic book design. The shadows are more defined, the color palette is darker. At times it reminds me of Mike Mignola's style, just less angular and sharp. The parts that are taken out of the movie are beautifully drawn. Maybe a little too well. I want you to understand. To me, the parts that follow the movie are the best parts of the run, which sucks because it completely undermines the new plot with Paul and makes me think this would have been better if it was just an adaptation of the movie. Can I stop hitting? Which also fucking sucks because I can see the passion that Walsh put into this. To be both the writer, the artist, as well as designing cover variants for each issue. If anything, I want to like it, not just as a Frankenstein fan, but because I feel like Walsh is too, and he wanted to show that love. But again, I am so sorry. The new additions to the story just aren't hitting for me. But I have a theory. Walsh wasn't vibing with it either. Hear me out. What if the reason all the movie scenes are so good, both in presentation and design, because he wanted to do just an adaptation? But Skybound wasn't doing that. They were selling new stories with new points of views, and in order to do his adaptation, he needed something new. It makes sense to me. That would explain why the movie bits have the best art and why Paul feels so much like an afterthought. What also helps my theory is how the run ends. Much like in the film, the Frankenstein monster carries Henry to the top of a windmill and throws him off to the mob below, hitting one of the turbines on the way down. The villagers then set the windmill on fire and allegedly kill the monster. Now here is where the movie ended. But unfortunately, Paul exists, and there's this thing called a story arc that Walsh, by obligation, has to conclude. So why not retcon the beginning of Bride of Frankenstein, where Henry was unconscious after taking a double header off a 4-story drop with a turbine interference, and have him wake up immediately so Paul can confront him. This is also the one and only time Henry and Paul meet face to face, by the way. Paul has the opportunity to kill Henry without any objection, but he doesn't. The end. Okay, I know I trashed on this pretty hard, but there is one thing about the run that I did thoroughly enjoy that I wanted to save to the end because I wanted to end on something positive. At the beginning of each issue, we get to see the origins of some of the monster's body parts, namely its hands, brain, heart, and eyes. The hands belong to Paul's father, a police officer who would whittle Paul toys in his free time. The brain belonged to a killer crook who was being chased by Paul's father. He managed to mortally wound Pops with a knife before Paul's dad threw his oil lantern at him and lit him on fire. This also explains why the monster has a fear of fire outside of primal instinct and the fact that Fritz tortured it with the torch. The heart belonged to a man named Robert, a friend of Henry Frankenstein who had a jealous crush on Elizabeth. Robert was murdered by the crook and was actually the incident that Paul's dad stumbled upon that began the chase. The eyes belonged to a man sentenced to hang, an event that Henry attended to see if the man had any salvageable parts, which also led to the event that led Robert being alone in an alleyway, and so on and so forth. Is it convoluted that all of these body parts share such an intertwined story? Most definitely, but I will give credit where credit is due. Out of all of the original content in this run, these are easily the best additions. In conclusion, this is probably my least favorite run in the entire lineup. Paul simply exists in an adaptation of a movie I love, and his presence just mucks it all up. While the idea of seeing the origins of some of the monster's parts is interesting, it's not enough to save the story, but is something that makes it stand out. The best parts are the bits you can already see if you watch the movie, and the characters come off as assholes because they are more than willing to fight a child. Thank you for joining me for this installment of Shelf-O-Ween. Only 2 more weeks to go and 1 completed comic run left. Let's hope this one wraps up better than the other one. I am not fucking sorry. Till next time.